This is Delhi. Please stand by for our next program. This is All India Radio. We now bring you a panel discussion entitled The Republic, One Nation, One Vision. The panelists are Ms. Shobna Narayan, renowned danceress and former administrator, Shri Kamar Agha, senior journalist and renowned defense expert, Shri Atul Shanglu, former Assistant Secretary General FICCI, and Shri K.V. Prasad, senior journalist and media personality who initiates and moderates the discussion.
On January 26, Republic of India enters its 72nd year. In its journey of 75 years plus as a free and independent country, this voyage has been one of challenges as the country marched steadily with determination on its way to become a developing economy. The transformation from an underdeveloped country that is now progressing by setting its sights to be among the developed countries is a tribute to the hard work of its people who transformed the vision of its leaders. Now, on the onward march, the country is looking to be among the leaders when India turns 100 by the year 2047. As mentioned, at the beginning of the journey, the landscape was vastly different. As the young nation took baby steps, its leaders and framers of the constitution were acutely aware of the limitations as a culturally diverse country that spoke different languages, had different beliefs, and a population whose levels of literacy and life expectancy were low. Compounding it were inadequacies on several fronts, starting with catering to the basic requirement of food, clothing, and shelter. While population was around 361 million, the average literacy was around 17%, life expectancy around 32 years, average consumption of food 400 grams, and average growth rate between 3.5 to 4%. The country over years lifted millions above the poverty line, overcame shortages in the food sector through green and white revolutions to become self-sufficient and an exporter too. All these and more have not deterred the country in its resolve to emerge as a leading nation which made a name in the world as leaders in science and technology, from deep sea to space, with information technology being one of its jewels. Mr. Shunglu, to start with the conversation, we would like to hear what's your impression of the journey that we've carried forward?
India, when it gained independence in the 1947, it was a country in abject poverty. We had barely literacy rate of 12%, and our foreign exchange reserves were very low. There were sharp and deep social differences which had cast doubts on India's survival as a nation. And the brightest jewel in the British crown was also among the poorest countries in the world. So when we got independence, it was almost an impossible task, and there was a lot of skepticism whether India would survive as a union or as a nation. The British kept on saying India was never a nation, and they said that they had kept it together, and as soon as they leave, India should disintegrate. So in the 50s, we did have food to eat, but there were various other shortages. We had butter shortage and other products because the lot of imports that used to happen earlier all vanished. In the 60s, we had a problem with wheat because a lot of investment had been diverted into heavy industries and agriculture had been left on its own, because of which we faced a major wheat shortage, and the United States stepped in and helped us. The period from the 60s, 70s and 80s was a period of shortages. We didn't have abundance of anything. In addition to this, we had this license quota Raj, because of which we were not allowed to produce. In fact, if you had a license to produce 5,000 vehicles and you produce 5,001 vehicle, I am told that you would be penalized for that extra vehicle that you had produced. So there was a premium and everything. The economy was very inefficient. If you wanted to buy a car, you had to pay a premium. If you wanted a truck, you had to pay a premium, because there was shortages right through. And the basic change came after 1991, when we had actually become bankrupt. And this was the biggest opportunity that India grasped, and we were able to turn the corner. We never faced this kind of a problem again after 1991.
So, as they say, every crisis offers an opportunity, and India made the beginning at that point of time to open up its economy. We'll speak of it later.
Every crisis, we have to take that into an advantage. For example, I'll tell you, since we mentioned about crisis, the COVID was a big learning for India. And for the first time, we understood our power developing the vaccine on our own without any Western help.
Agasa, if I were to move on to one more important area, which we've always been a country's external relationship. From the time immemorial, we know India has had a difficult situation to face with. Would you encapsulate as to what was the world scenario at the time? Because India became independent soon after the World War II ended. The world was emerging, a new world was coming out.
It was a very difficult period, not only for India, for the entire world. Millions of people have died, death and destruction of Europe, many other, Africa, Asian, and America was the only major power which was there, And in such a situation, after a few years, we got independence, At that time, the India was, population was not as much as we are having today. And economically not much developed. Industrially also, we were very weak. But there were very few structures, operating within the country. So a lot of challenges before the leadership, The Nehru has somehow managed and laid the foundation of public sector companies, mother industries, which he described, the steel plant and other things. We were finding difficulty in getting technology from the Western nation. He moved on to Russia from the Soviet Union, from where mega steel plants or dams or defense equipment came. Secondly, he wanted to continue to maintain good relation with the Western nation as well, because India was a democratic nation. We have common political goals as well. So therefore, the relation continued with the British and with other former colonial power and other countries and further strengthened, And that was the period when Cold War also came in. So then another pressure came to join the NATO or Warsaw-backed military alliances. The Pakistan, our neighbor, has joined CENTO, Central Treaty Organization. So Cold War came just to our borders. So these were the difficulties which India was facing. Gradually, we started developing. The railway network was expanded. Rail and road network also developed. Further, banks were allowed to give concessional loans to the private industrialists. And then we had other problems coming, 62 war with China, that major setback came. Then again, 65 war with Pakistan, 71 another war fought, in which Bangladesh was created, some relative peace was established at that time. But economic situation worsened, labor strikes and other things. Unemployment grew. Then new phase, regional opposition parties emerged. And not much emphasis was made on foreign policy at that time for about almost 7, 8, 10 years when the regional groupings were ruling. Again, Indira Gandhi came to power and she managed, to bring back. By that time, the other development has taken place was Soviet intervention in Afghanistan. And then that was a major problem, because the response to that was Pakistan launched a jihad. The jihadi movement emerged and Pakistan started supporting jihadis. And resulted was a foregone conclusion that this militancy would ultimately come to India. And this is what happened in the Jammu and Kashmir. So the Pakistan game plan was to at least destabilize the region. They have failed to do that. But now a major shift has taken place. It started with the Rajiv modernization plan and then globalization came. Narasimha Rao's policy and that is continuing. Liberal regime was imposed and the present regime is totally aligned with the liberal economic policies have been adopted. Still some challenges are there and still some reforms have to be made, But major emphasis is now on infrastructure development, make the country suitable to the foreign investors because we need foreign investment now. We need sophisticated technology of dual use, for further development. So we have to take this quantum jump. And we have already taken number of initiatives, which is helping. The private sector is booming now. Economy has reached to continue to grow to 7-8% for the last several years, barring the pandemic period. But there are many challenges as well.
Well, as we go along, we'll see that in the last 7 decades plus, this country has seen major change in the landscape itself. We started from where we were. Ashok, you wear several hats. You've been an administrator, worked in the government, know it from the insides of it. You also have a deep study in defense strategy issues. and the historical, but you're well-known face and very popular personality for keeping the Indian culture tradition high and flying. What would your comments on in this journey?
Well, since our friends are already talking about the economic and the foreign policy aspect, I would like to concentrate on the cultural part of it, because that encompasses a whole range of topics. In fact, the complete life of style of the people, the mindset of the people, the thinking of the people. And I have to go back to the colonial times, because colonial times, we as Indians, most of us are aware that we have always lived with, coexisted with the past. Past is there within us. We are living the present, but we are living the past, and yet we are living into the future. But it was never demarcated. But colonial period brought to us a sense of awareness to actually know our past history. So the Natya Shastra was rediscovered. Our temples were rediscovered. So all these aspects came, and therefore within that, a spirit of nationalism also, there was an upsurge, not only amongst our freedom fighters and others, but even amongst the people from the cultural field. So at that point of time, it was a kind of wanting to know your past, your region, your identity. And then later on, in the last 70 years, we have come to a stage where we have matured. We are comfortable in our identity. But now also starts that we would like to branch out. Once we become confident, and therefore the new avenues were chosen, and new thought trends emerged, reawakening of what is our mythology, how relevant is it in our present day context. So social issues. Now, one important thing happened was a total breakdown of gender barriers and taking up of social issues, because everywhere we still had persistent and is still persisting, so various social issues. Now, the various art forms became a vehicle of expression, and also important was the gender barrier that was broken down completely. Another aspect was that the celluloid world, the popular world, and the traditional arts. Earlier also, it had coexisted. But now with improvement in technology, that impacted us even more. Earlier it was a bit distant, but now it became overpowering. And therefore that also created its own challenges, but at the same time, questions were raised, and at the same time harmony was sought, and there were also different schools of thoughts emerging. Now, the people who went outside became ambassadors of that time of the traditional culture, what they perceived as traditional culture, what India is known. It became one of our soft powers when you look at our India-Russia relationships and other things. But today, they are somebody that we engage with, because they have also matured. The Indian diaspora over there, we have also matured. Now it is a different game. Traditional handicrafts, artisans have been affected, because with this increasing technology, the traditional artisans and handicrafts, etc., have given way to, or textiles have given way to power looms. So handlooms have given way to power looms, where the economic aspect comes in, and the economic aspect of all the people, the vast majority to whom we are catering to, and also the question of survival of this entire gamut of people associated with culture. Another important factor was that while I talked about breaking down of gender barriers, there was also opening out of vocational avenues, because things have suddenly opened up, and now amazing fields were available. Now technology was married into the culture, designing, graphic designing, etc. So things have changed, and since 2014 there has been further shift has taken place, that now let us also look into other areas of our ancient heritage. We were looking at and consolidating our position in our ancient heritage, many areas, but now there were many others, and therefore certain other areas were now again looked into. We were revisiting, trying to re-familiarize ourselves with Charak, with Sushruta, with our yoga principles, which were always there. We lived with it. I mean, majority of us are living with it. But now it became a discipline. And it was a conscious awareness that has been coming. And institutions were built. What was important was, as our previous speaker has just talked about institution building, and you talked about institutional building, the initial period was used in building up institutions, to getting to know what is available. India being such a diverse country, to be able to harness and at least get the knowledge of whole mapping of our traditional arts and others. So that became important. Now, once that has happened, now we are embarking on another route. So now we are taking it further, and we are seeing how to harness other avenues to our traditional, institutional that we have already built up, and be able to express ourselves, maintain heritage. But things keep changing.
Yeah, surely. And
They keep changing.
I mean, as the world moves forward, we'll do that. So, Shonaji, of course, you mentioned about the fact that cultural diplomacy is a whole realm in itself, and this 70-year plus journey that we've taken has shown India in a different light because of its rich heritage and our ability to project that on an international sphere. Shungla Sahab, if I were to take you down to the fact that you mentioned in one of the earlier comments that post 1991, the whole thrust was to develop our economy. As we mentioned, 3.5 to 4% was the average rate of growth. And from then on, we are clocking more than 7% on a steady rate. How would you look at that?
I would say that there are certain times, like 1991, was a tectonic shift in Indian politics and Indian economics. We were bankrupt, and the World Bank.
We put gold abroad.
Yeah. And whatever, we needed money, and the World Bank had stipulated certain conditions without which the money would not come. And we had to accept those conditions. Otherwise, we would not have been able to service our debt. And the worst thing in life is if you're not able to pay back your debtor on time.
We are seeing what's happening in Pakistan and what happened in Sri Lanka, probably.
Exactly. And the same thing happened in Turkey. So you never default on your debt. You may take more debt. And one of the conditions was that you have to open up your economy. Now, the minute this was opened, the economy was opened, and the spirit of Indian industrialist entrepreneurship was allowed to open up, we started moving. I mentioned that before 1991, there was a line for everything. There was a line for telephones, there was a line for your scooter, there was a line for your car, there was a line for gas, what have you, there was a line. You could not buy anything off the shelf. Come 1991, gradually these lines started fading away. You could then buy your car of your choice within the matter of 2-3 months. The Maruti waiting list came down dramatically. I remember I needed to buy a car in 91, and within 2 or 3 months I got the car, which would otherwise take a long time. No premium, I just got it. So that was one major tectonic shift that happened after 91. Number 2 was the license Raj, which was totally dismantled. Now, the biggest problem with the license Raj was that not only were they not permitting you to produce, they set unviable standards. Means you could not produce in a viable manner. So supposing there was a global scale that if you wanted to produce in a viable manner, you needed a refinery of, say, 7 million tons. But the license you got was 3.5 million tons. Now, because imports were restricted and you fell in line with that, the price at which you produced was cost plus. So, minute the license Raj was dismantled, the scales of production went up. These lines vanished. I mentioned also that the Indian economy after 1991 gradually started moving from a situation of no phone, nobody had a telephone, to cell phones. You just jumped one technology, and this itself led to a lot of trade and efficiency. For example, we have vendors who come to our house to send vegetables.
So essentially, it is the technology which brought about the change in people's life and the way in which the technology is being used for ease of living, as it's now called, in a way.
Yes, the thing is that people were also prepared to embrace technology. Yeah. There was no resistance to embracing technology. Now, if you just see how much improvement has taken place in our lives. You can sit at home and file your income tax return. Earlier, there used to be a situation when you used to file the return but still send a hard copy. Now, that also has been done away with. You file your return and you get a message OTP and you punch that in, confirmed. So, no paper, it all is done. Likewise, you pay your electricity bill online, you pay your water bill online, phone bill, you do shopping online. And the interesting thing about technology in India is that in many places we have even leapfrogged from what the West is doing and what we are doing. We've leapfrogged. And the other thing is that we have a humongous number of students who are studying the STEM subjects. STEM. That's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. You just have to go to a Western campus, an American campus. They have these graduation ceremonies. And you will be shocked at the number of students graduating who are of Indian origin or East Asian origin.
I'd like to bring Mr. Aga in here. Sure. Kamar Saab, just an issue that Shuglu Saab also flagged. Post-COVID virtual diplomacy has taken over. In fact, during the COVID times, people started engaging with each other without having a physical interaction. And that has been the norm, and that probably manifested in the latest South-South meeting that India organized in the virtual world. This shift in the way in which world affairs are being conducted, and of course the traditional methods also keep following, how would you juxtapose them?
It's a very major change, revolutionary change, you could see, in terms of technology upgradation, and as Mr. Shanglu has mentioned, it's acceptance by the people, the global community, as well as large number of Indians, very big community. Even a sabzi wala is now, as he said, using cell phone to sell his products. So many areas it has been used. And very interesting thing, as the Prime Minister has said, COVID we should see as an opportunity. And then his very important statement which he also said that, the era of war has ended. Ukraine, because that was continuing for more than a year now, almost a year. And he said that the peaceful settlement of dispute, which India always believes in. India has always promoted right from the Gandhi ji down to Modi ji that we have so much problem with China, we have so much problem with Pakistan, but we still insist to come to the negotiating table, and talk to us, and this has helped, forcing Chinese back to the original places in East Ladakh or Doklam or number of places, or for Pakistan also, we are forcing them, but we have our conditions, that talk and terror will not go side by side. If you want a peace, you have to take some measures that show that you have militancy should have gone down, Then main focus of the present government is on development and growth. These are the two most important things, the infrastructure development within the countries, which should be suited to foreign investment. We need foreign investment. We need technology, sophisticated technology of dual use, for further development. And now the technology which we are getting, earlier it used to come from the Western nations. Now, Western nation, they don't have monopoly over the technology. There are many countries. India even has sent Chandrayaan. We have a very thriving or big nuclear program, for peaceful purposes, medical applications of nuclear. Tremendous work has been done. Space program we have. And IT technology we have done very good. That has been recognized by the international community. And third thing, we also want to maintain 6 to 8% economic growth. The other ambitions which the government has wanted a multipolar world, because we believe the unipolar politics or unipolar world is over. Now, many power centers have emerged. India is one of them. Therefore, the government wanted reform in UN Security Council, enlargement of it. India is one of the members. Many countries have recognized that India should have a place, because India is one country which is not promoting its own interest or its own cause, but also along with the developing nations or least developed nations, causes also championed by the government of India. So in order to achieve these things, we have to have uninterrupted oil supply. So energy security comes, and this oil supplies come from mainly 70-80% used to come from Persian Gulf region. We have a very good relation with the oil producing Arab countries as well as with Iran. We have a good relation. We wanted peace there. Connectivity we wanted, so the Chabahar is coming up, that would connect us with Central Asia, Russia and Caucasus, Russia and many other Eastern European countries. And then there are how to achieve these goals. We have different regional associations. India is part of this, like BRIC is one side, G20 on the other side. Then Quad is there. Then major emphasis of the government is on neighborhood first. Then, the Southeast Asia, with whom India maintains historic cultural ties with these nations. So the ties with the East Asian as well as Southeast Asian nations are developing. Then we have also emphasizing on South-South cooperation. That is also continue to grow in the form of whether it is BRICS or whether it is number of SCO and many other organizations, which are working. Now the problem is the Ukraine war. So the Prime Minister wanted a peaceful settlement of this war. He's against the war. He has talked to both the leaders, of both the countries, but so far no breakthrough has achieved.
Well,
and
we hope as we go along that war with Ukraine, which is almost coming to an year, ends it soon, because the world economy is supposed to be running into a problem, because what the Davos voices have told us is the country and the world might have economic issues. Ma'am, we're running out of time, but very quickly I would like you to just expand a little more on that issue, which popular celluloid versus traditional Indian A, and B, the way in which art and culture has been the torchbearer of India and Indianness.
Well, the first part, popular versus traditional, that debate will always be there. The question is, how judicious are we as people to maintain the fine balance? Because each one feeds the other, each one is interdependent. But it is basically because of technology that there's an overriding influence of the popular technology, which sort of rules our mindset about what we should look like, how we should dress, how we should behave. It could be taken in a positive manner. It could also be whichever way you would like to assess it as. So that aspect is there because culture is a very vast word. Now, I would also like to mention that the COVID situation, when it happened, the economic part of it, that even this entire sector is a self-employed sector. Perhaps we have to see as to how insecure and secure they can be made to. Because those are the challenges before each one of the various vocations concerned. The third part that you have to ask about is of the reach abroad. Now, there we have also to see, yes, we have been taken to be a great ambassador of our soft power and others, but we have to also see what the audience that we are addressing. That is a challenge, whether it is only to the Indian diaspora who are wanting to relive their past and maintain their links with their mother country, or are we also reaching out to the local population? Now, that is a big challenge before each one of us, and it depends again on each one of us. I always say that the government on its part has always been trying its best to reach out to people through policies and programs, but it depends on the people themselves. The accountability and responsibility lies with each and every person.
Well, I think on that note, as all Indians, we can agree on many points, we can disagree on many points, and agree and disagree on all points together. Mm-hmm. But the fact remains, 70 years plus, this republic has seen successive smooth transition of powers to governments elected through the power of ballot. And we've seen in our neighborhood, not many countries can boast of such a proud heritage in terms of it. I'm sure as the Republic turns 72, the march towards the 100th year of the country's independence will take all of us to a more glorious path. Thank you very much for being us.
Thank you. Thank you.
In our national program of talks tonight, you were listening to a panel discussion entitled The Republic, One Nation, One Vision. The panelists were Ms. Shobna Narayan, renowned danceress and former administrator, Shri Kamar Agha, senior journalist and renowned defense expert, Shri Atul Shanglu, former Assistant Secretary General, FICCI, and Shri K.V. Prasad, senior journalist and media personality who initiated and moderated The Discussion. Produced and presented by Naveen K. Gupta of All India Radio Delhi. This program came to you from the Delhi station of All India Radio.